Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be discussing of how to make your own path in Abyss of Legends based on what kind of champions you have. For today's example we're going to be using a situation where you do not have Aegon or Nick Fury or Dr. Doom, but you do have Human Torch, for instance, and some other Mystic Champion, plus maybe access to some relatively decent damage dealing champion. So the first kind of couple of important things to note would be right about here. Where did we go? So we have a Mephisto and we have Joe Fixit. Now, as we can see, after the point of Joe Fixit, all three paths kind of combine and run in the same direction for a while, right? So that means that there are three different paths where whichever start you choose, you're going to end up at this specific point at Joe Fixit. And Mephisto, you can see that is the same case with two different paths. So instead of mandatorily being forced to go up and dealing with the Thing, Omega Red, Quake and Medusa, you can choose to go down by the Darkhawk and by the Luke Cage, and that would be a relatively easier solution because Darkhawk can be like one shot or two shot with Human Torch, and Luke Cage can be dealt with relatively well with She-Hulk, Spider-Gwen, Stealth Suit Spidey and a couple of other champions. Or pretty much any high damage dealing champion if you have fairly high ability to intercept and play the game. It is a difficult fight, but the fact that Darkhawk is a really simple fight and the fact that you can choose several easy fights afterwards will make it worthwhile, especially if you bring a specific counter for that fight or practice slightly beforehand. Now again, we're going to assume that your team consists of Human Torch, a Mystic Champion that can be, let's say, Morningstar, so Yito's absolutely shred stuff with Morningstar. For the sake of an argument, Stealth Suit Spidey and whatever. So you have used Human Torch for Darkhawk, you have used Stealth Suit Spidey for Luke Cage. You can move down here and you can choose whether you want to go to Dormammu and to Mephisto, which would both be extremely easy fights for Human Torch, but then you would have to deal with Captain Marvel movie, Ghost, Iron Man, Infinity War, and then Joe Fixit. Now I would not suggest doing that, especially if you are not running Aegon. What I would suggest doing instead would be going down, dealing with Old Man Logan, which is a relatively easy one or two shot with a Human Torch. Then you go on and move on next to the Havoc. Now you can use a decent Havoc counter, which would be Colossus, Guillotine 2099, or Warlock, or Dr. Octopus, or whoever else you have available. So long as you have a decent counter for Havoc, he's not that big of a problem. Additionally, he doesn't have any difficult specific nodes on him, and he only has 2.6 million health. It's not the fight you would normally look out for, but it's not too big of a deal to deal with. And after Havoc, you move on to Dormammu, which would again be a relatively easy one-shot for Human Torch. Then you have Joe Fixit, and you can again use your Stealth Suit Spider-Man or whoever else does a lot of damage. After that, we are moving on to Mardon. Mardon is a bit trickier for Human Torch, but it's still a couple revive fight if you're doing well, and it's not that hard because he's a Mystic Champion obviously, and you do get a lot of smolders and you are able to do a lot of damage. And then moving on, you are at Venom the Duck, at which point, as we mentioned before, we have the Mystic Champions such as Morningstar or I don't know, Magic or something else, and I saw Yito's absolutely destroy that Venom the Duck with Morningstar, and that would be a relatively easy fight there because you would constantly be nullifying all of his buffs, and every time he throws a special attack he gets 10 buffs. Now you have Howard the Duck, which would be a long fight, there is no way around it. It would take a while, but Stealth Suit Spider-Man with his extremely high crit chance should do a decent enough job getting past there. And then afterwards you're going to have Champion and Hyperion, which again both are relatively easy fights for Mystic champions, most of the Mystic champions to be fair, but in this case we're using Morningstar as an example, so that would be like 1-2 revive fights. Now then you move on straight up to Cyclops, and Cyclops again is extremely easy fight for Human Torch because you kind of end up parrying a lot of his laser beams, and that gives you a bunch of smolder and you do a lot of damage. Meanwhile, moving up you have Loki, which is easy fight for Human Torch once again, and then you have Aegon, which would be the easy fight for your Mystics such as Morningstar, because he constantly gets 6 buffs, 6 furies, so you'd be constantly nullifying and spamming special attacks. Then you have Invisible Woman, which would be a bit trickier, but still Human Torch does have a relatively good matchup because he can ignore miss mechanic, and he also gains smolders by blocking special attacks, therefore it wouldn't be as bad as it kind of seems. And then you have Cull Obsidian, which is a one-shot with most of the Mystic nullifiers, or relatively easy fight. And then you're at Collector, and you can use whoever or everything, because Collector is a nasty fight to begin with, and there's no way around it. Aegon is pretty much the best option. And then at this point we can take a look at the map here, and we have basically designed a path for you. If you do not have Aegon, if you do not have Dr. Doom, if you do not have Nick Fury, you should still be perfectly fine if you choose to go down to the Darkhawk, to Luke Cage, then moving up to Old Man Logan, Havoc, Dormammu. And if we do the count on the fights, then out of all of the path we have 1 fight for Human Torch, 2 fights for Human Torch, 3 fights for Human Torch, 4 fights, 5, 6, 7 fights out of all of it would be explicitly for Human Torch. Then we have a bunch of cosmic fights like Venom the Duck, Hyperion, the Champion, and those are for your Mystic character, as well as Aegon. So that's 4 fights there, and then you only have like 3 fights to cover with like a basic generic damage dealing champion, which would be Howard the Duck, Havoc, Luke Cage, and Joe Fixit, I believe, if I'm not missing anything. So the base idea is vast majority of the fights during this path you would be using your Human Torch for, then there would be a good chunk you're using your Mystic Nullifier for, and then only like 4 fights you would actually have to breeze through, dealing like as in a regular long high damage output fight, right? So this is only one of the ways how you can design your own path, because there are multiple intersections in this map in general, which I can highlight here for a bit, but I'm not going to discuss all of them in today's video, because otherwise the video would get too lengthy and kind of get lost in translation. I will make like another part for this video, and in that I will discuss if you do not have Human Torch but you do have Aegon or something else, or leave me suggestions. I'll go through a couple of theoretical scenarios here. But yeah, so let's select that markup again, and let's just quickly highlight some intersections that you definitely do need to notice, and that's typically is just the points where things join in. So here we have Joe Fixit, we have Mephisto, and then over here we have fight after Invisible Woman, and it's kind of tricky, man, phones are hard sometimes. Then we have this fight here after Omega Red, and a few more kind of like intersections over there. And all of these sections kind of mean, so long as you can see that the path leading up to them double up, you can pick and choose whichever way you want to go. There's only few very little things that you do need to keep in mind. In order to be able to cover the map, you will have to do Darkhawk and Luke Cage 3 times. You'll have to do this Iron Man Infinity War once, and you'll have to do this thing 1 time. That is the only kind of like quote-unquote rule you must follow to start out, and everything else you can kind of fill in afterwards yourself by traveling through the map. Now obviously you do need to keep in mind where you have went and what you have done, but for most part, whichever path you do take the first time around, you will be able to cover the rest of the map in 4 additional paths. So do not worry about making your own path and then having to do an extra path afterwards in order to explore it. because so long as you know where you went, you will be able to map out the map for yourself, which is in fact exactly what I did for myself as well. Because yeah, I went in blind, and my initial path was kind of a mixture of path 1 and path 3 and path 4 or something like that, because I started technically on the easy path, then I did the Deadpool fight, then I went down, then I turned to the right side instead of the left side, and then I didn't go straight up, but I went back in and did the massacre fight. So I kind of mixed in 3 or 4 different paths in my initial clear, but I still ended up exploring it 100% with 5 paths, just like this map suggests, or just like most of the people will be doing. But just because the path is laid out specifically here on this map does not mean you have to follow it fight by fight. My suggestion to everybody is, like, quite honestly, just take a copy of Truco's map, remove the color from it so it is easier to kind of color in for yourself, and then just draw out your own path and start with the one that you would find easiest based on your champions right now. And that is pretty much it, because as helpful as the maps obviously are, they're not the Bible. Just because somebody says that this is path 3 does not mean that you need to explore it exactly that set way. Each of us have different champions, each of us have different rosters, so you might be missing some of the optimal champions, and you can always customize to your own needs. So again, in today's video we went through how to do this initial completion mainly with Human Torch and like a Morning Star, and we're gonna pick some different champions or some other champions missing and decide some different path which we would find easy afterwards. But that will pretty much do for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, do let me know, and do leave some suggestions. What kind of path would you like me to see plan out for Abyss of Legends based on what champion availability, more or less. And if you have any questions, you can surely hit me up online. I'll try to answer it. But that will pretty much do for today. And hit that like button, hit that sub button, all of it is greatly appreciated. Basically hit all the good buttons, share the video with your friends, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya.